Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cafe New Canadians. Today, we've all gathered here to talk about another session. Today, we're all here for yet another session of Cafe New Canadians, where we will talk about whether you're Zooming right or not in this time when you're staying at home. Cafe New Canadians is brought to you by New Canadians, a web and TV series which talks about everything related to newcomers in Canada. We talk about employment, settlement, education, and entrepreneurship, issues like these. You can watch us on Omni TV. At the same time, you can watch us on YouTube. All our videos are out there as well. So as I said earlier, today we're here for yet another session, and I'm your host, Shruti Dargan. Today we will be joined by Roxana Radulescu, an expert, consultant, and master coach who's going to be talking about how is it that you can make the most of staying at home, specifically in terms of video interviews, video chats. That's exactly what we're all doing these days. So welcome, Roxana.
Thank you, Shruti. It's good to be back here.
Yes, thank you. As we talk about whether you're Zooming right or not, please remember that you can also keep sending us your questions. You can type those questions in the Q&A tab on Zoom, or you can chat with us on YouTube as well, because we're live streaming this webinar as well. So Roxana, as we start talking about whether or not we're Zooming right, Zoom has become this one medium that we're all using. And every day, our virtual meetings, the sessions that we have, whether it is your office meetings, whether it is an interview that you're having, whether it is an online networking session that you're having, video interviews have become a huge part of what we're trying to do. So what are your comments in general about how is it that one can make the most of video interviews?
Yeah, you're right. I think, you know what, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying working from home has turned into meeting frenzy. And it's true. I mean, we're all meeting online, we're all meeting virtually, and everything moved here. So it's not just learning, it's not just webinars, it's information interviews, it's job interviews, it's catching up with your team members, with your boss, with your clients, whoever that is. It's all happening online. So I think to start the things right, I think we need to start with some technical tips here, and that are a big part of the preparation, because the main difference between going somewhere to meet somebody and staying home to meet somebody is the environment, right? And when I think about the immediate things that we can still control are the environment that we're having the meeting in. So consider things like background. Again, I was talking to somebody and she said, look, I'm meeting my colleagues in my team. And at some point, somebody realized that they could see behind them, there was the liquor cabinet. And they stopped the video and then they moved to another place where the background wasn't showing anything like alcohol or something that, you know, you wouldn't normally want to share when you're having a business meeting, right? So think about it this way. When we were meeting in the office or when we were going to an interview, we would typically be invited to sit down in one of their conference rooms. So we didn't have to think about the environment. Now, actually, the fact that we have control over the environment, in a way, it's good because you're at home. So you're on your territory. It's that kind of gives you a little bit more power than if you would go to an interview somewhere else, right? You're at home, so make sure that you're comfortable with whatever is behind you, and that people can see you. Because if I have, for instance, the window behind me, the whole light will be captured by the camera and my face won't. You want people to be able to see your face because you want to communicate with them, right? Also, consider the sound. The sound as in the noise, the background noise that might be there. So you want to keep your windows closed for the duration of that meeting, particularly if it's an interview and if you want to be able to focus, first of all. So make sure that the background and the light and the sound are good for you. And ideally wear some headsets with a microphone, because that is going to be even better. You will be able to hear people better, and also they will be able to hear you. And also, if you're on Wi-Fi, consider your internet connection and where you are relatively to the Wi-Fi router. Like today, for instance, I needed to change right before this session. I needed to change the room. I was initially in another room of the house, and I had to move here because the internet wasn't too strong there. So again, one lesson out of this is make sure that you are online sometime before you actually start, to make sure that at the start time you're online already and you have everything already taken care of.
Like you said, of course, Wi-Fi is a make or break when it comes to video interviews, and especially when one's doing it from home.
Exactly. And when you have maybe other members of your household that are using Wi-Fi at the same time, right? So you're basically sharing it, and it might be slower. So also make sure that if it's a more formal discussion, if it's an information or job interview, you want your family or whoever you is in the house with you at that moment know that, hey, I'm gonna have this job interview and it's important, and let them know so that they don't disturb you, and so that they know in a way to protect you. It's also as if you had to book a meeting room when you were meeting people in the office, right? You want that room to be booked by you so that other people don't use it.
Yes. And would you also want to talk a little about, of course, as I can see on your slide as well, that, body language here plays a major, major role. Of course, like
Yes.
environment has a big role to play. But at the same time, how is it that you plan to sit in front of it? Are you eye contact when you're participating in a webinar, or, when you're having a meeting? What's the right way of going about it?
Yes. Well, first of all, you want people to be able to see you, ideally somewhere from the waist up, so that for like I speak now and then I use my hands to demonstrate something. You also want them to be able to see you properly. Think about it this way: in a meeting, in a normal face-to-face meeting, you would have this conversation, you would be sitting down at a desk, at a table, right? So think about trying to recreate the same kind of image when you are in a virtual meeting. You want to be somewhere at the same level, so when you look at the camera, you actually give the other people the impression that you're looking at them, and that will help minimize the distance, because you already have the screen between you. So that's sort of a communication block, right, which you have to remove. So the body language, and especially eye contact and looking at the people that you're talking to, is definitely going to help you make the connection with them faster. what I would suggest for people who are not normally used to having this kind of virtual sessions is to have a mock practice with somebody in their family or some of their friends, whoever you're more comfortable with, because what happens is when we have this kind of sessions, we also see ourselves on the screen. And when you're not used to that, you kind of tend to look at yourself as well, and that is so distracting because we automatically start thinking, oh my god, my hair is not good, I'm doing this, I suddenly realize all of the things that I don't like about how I show up on screen, and that is so distracting, because it does not allow me to focus on the topic, to focus on the message that I'm trying to send here, and to look at you instead of looking at me, and catch those glimpses of body language and eye contact, and be able to make the connection with you and take feedback from you as the interviewer, so I know when you're interested in what I have to say, and when I should stop, maybe when I should be asking a question and stuff like that. So a little bit of practice before doesn't hurt.
Yeah. So the 2 points that you mentioned so far about environment and body, the environment around you and the body language, both in a way are also to so as to not cause a distraction for the person in front of you, right? Would you, in this scenario, because a lot of webinar platforms like Zoom, for instance, offers a virtual background option, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So would you recommend that one uses that instead to kind of hide the background in the house and at the same time, look professional and not cause any distraction to the person who we're talking to?
Um, it's that one is tricky. I mean, it really, you have no white wall behind you where you could actually sit down and have the conversation from, and there's no other way than use it. And ideally, when you hide the background, ideally use some kind of screen behind you, or something like a photo or something that is professional enough, that you can put as a screen behind you, instead of just putting the blur. The blur, what I feel is, for the person on the other side of the screen, that is almost as if in a conversation I have my hands in my pockets.
Yeah.
It's like I have something to hide, and it's not like, yeah, okay, you don't want to show me what's in your household because maybe it's, I don't know, something that you're not ready to share, but that creates more distance between you and me. And it puts you, and plus when you move, if you move like this with the screen behind you, it cuts a little bit of your face and of your body when you move, because it acts like sort of a special effects in the movies. So you have to keep yourself looking straight to the camera and move as little bit as possible left to right. So ideally, if nothing else, just sit at a table where you have a white wall behind you, and that's better than using the blurry screen.
Yeah. And not just the blurry screen. What about like those professional virtual backdrops that are available?
Mhm.
For instance, like I saw the other day on Zoom that there was, you can have a bridge behind you, you can have a beautiful scenery right behind you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of divided on that if it's a good idea or not, because it can still be very distracting.
It is very distracting, and it has nothing to do with your message. That's why I said it's, think about it. If I'm interviewing for a job and I have a nice even bridge or river or forest or mountain behind me that has nothing to do with the message, with the job, with the company, with I don't know, if you really want to impress them, look for their logo and make a screenshot and make a photo of it and put it behind you, or do something in, you can create something like in PowerPoint, a short slide with the role title that you're interviewing for and the company, and just put it, save it as a photo and put it as a screen. If you really want to get that creative, and if you think it's good for the kind of job that you apply for, especially for marketing people, I think that's another good opportunity to use technology in our advantage, right? It really depends on the job. But rather than having a forest or a river behind me have that don't help me deliver my message to the best I can deliver it, that don't support my messages in any way, those are super distracting.
Thank you. And the reason why I asked that, because there are tons of questions like these that suddenly start popping into our heads just when we sit down to have a conversation, and everyone tries their level best to have the best background, sit in a have the right posture when you're having these
Yeah.
conversations, but at the same time you get distracted, and there are tons of things that go on in your mind just then. So if our viewers right now also have a lot of questions regarding these video chats, please keep posting those in the Q&A section here, or you can also share them with us on YouTube, where we're also live streaming this webinar.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it to the next level now, wherein how much of a role do you think does the dress code play over here? Because
Mm-hmm.
I have had conversations with people wherein up to the waist, they're all dressed professionally, and suddenly they end up dropping a pen. And when they bend, I can see that they're in their pajamas.
Okay, so for the dress code, I chose this image because I think it kind of makes its own point. You are not going to go ski as a professional skier. You're not going to go ski in your pajama pants,
Yes.
right? It's the same thing, even if it's virtual. It's how you feel and how it helps you be prepared, right? If and it's I will know, probably nobody else will know, but I will know what I'm wearing. And I will know that normally, if I had to go for that interview to their headquarters, I would have dressed formally, right? And I would have never considered of having sweatpants instead of um, my formal dress. So, especially for job interviews and information interviews, because an information interview is almost like a job interview, but without the job there. But it's professional and it's still formal and it's still the first impression that you're making. And for the first impression, it's us who have to be prepared. It's us who have to feel confident first and foremost. And then I will be able to project that confidence over to you. If I don't feel confident, how are you supposed to feel confident, right? So the way I dress when I have this kind of formal conversation is going to show, even if you don't see it, is going to show in how I send my message across, or maybe not.
Yeah. Just for clarity, what kind of formals here would you suggest to our viewers? Would it be formals, or would it be semi-formals? Would it be smart casuals? What do you think seems professional enough when having these conversations?
So I think you can never fail if you're overdressed or if you're too formal, especially for job interviews. If you look at people, I was watching people broadcasting on TV, some of the presenters, they broadcast from home and they still wear a suit and a tie. You have the politicians who, again, they're interviewed, they show up in interviews on TV, they still wear a suit and a tie. If they're interviewed during the weekend, they don't wear the tie, but they still have the shirt and the jacket on, right? So it has to be, again, it's, think about it this way. It's, you want to go ski, you dress for the ski, dress for the part, right? It's, if you're an actor, you can't play Hamlet if you don't have the suit on, right? It's the same thing. Dress for the part. Consider what what job you're interviewing for, and think about how you would go if it was a face-to-face interview, how you would get dressed. And then dress accordingly, even if you're at home, and even if they know you're at home. It will show that, hey, I'm making an effort. I made an extra effort, even if I work from home, I interview from home. I make this effort because you're important to me. And I want you to perceive that, right? If it's important, I will prepare and I will give it my time and my energy. So that counts a lot.
Thank you, Roxana, for that piece of advice. So, when it comes to video chats, these video calls that we have,
Mhm.
they're being used for a ton of reasons, or for a lot of, you can call it maybe an office interview or a meeting that
Yeah.
we're having. It can also be for a friendly chat with a friend. So,
Mhm.
what essentially would you say are the similarities or differences when it comes to video chats with office colleagues, or when you're having an office, when you're having a interview online?
Yeah. What I find, especially these days, is the chats with your colleagues or with the team are more informal, because we're all trying to minimize that distance, the physical distance. And then if we make it more informal, it's as if we're still together, although we're apart. So, and I've seen people, I don't know, they meet for lunch, or they have coffee in the morning together as a team, or they have something like fun hour, or they have, if they have a weekly meetings, they wear something funky like hat, a funky hat or something like that. And it's wherever you can sit. Some people sit on the floor, some people are in their kitchens, to make it more human and to create that connection, keep that connection in place. Because normally when we're in the office, we don't only chat when we're at our desk. We meet on the hallway, we meet in the kitchen when we eat, we meet when we go grab a coffee, we go together for lunch, and we have all of these informal conversations as we are working in that space together. Now that that space doesn't exist anymore, we have to kind of recreate a different kind of connection and be creative about it. For so that is one thing. And that, think about what's in that invite. When you get that invite for your team meeting, um, check it and see how it sounds. If it sounds formal, if it sounds informal. Typically you would have something like, oh, let's meet and chat about this today. You should have an idea of how formal or informal that meeting is, and you have that feel. For the job interviews and the information interviews, they're still going to be formal, even if those the interviewers themselves, they will be joining from their homes. Make sure that they will be prepared to have that formal discussion with you. And probably they will be dressed more formally because they represent their company. And the way that they represent that company, the same way you represent your own brand, and you might be a good fit for their company because your whole image represents is a good representation of their company too. So again, and you can't usually, being more formally dressed cannot hurt in any way. Better show up at a picnic in a suit rather than show up at a wedding wearing shorts, right? So
Right,
kind of like this.
definitely. Definitely. At this point, how about we take a question from the audience as well?
Perfect.
So this is a question from Daryl. Now, considering from a standpoint of security and seeing that there's the spiking popularity of Zoom as a platform, there are a lot of security threats as well. We've read about cases wherein hackers were able to crash private chat rooms as well. So, what is your advice, or is there any best practice that one could follow when it
Mhm.
comes to saving yourself from that kind of embarrassment later?
Yeah, that's true. And I know that it happened. And also Zoom is working on it. They made an announcement that they're working on improving their security. I think the best way would be to every time, generate a new meeting ID, generate a password, activate that waiting lobby for people to wait for you to let them in so that you have control over who joins. I think for small meetings like this, like and a job interview, I think that shouldn't be our concern, because normally the company would be sending the link and they usually have everything very secured and encrypted and everything. And some of them don't even use Zoom. They use other platforms like WebEx or Microsoft Teams or whatever they already have
Or
that
Google
has even,
Hangouts.
or
Yeah,
Google Hangouts, and
yeah.
that has even more security in place. But even with Zoom, if you get the paid version, and a lot of companies do, that's also a little bit more secure. But for small meetings like this, I think the risks are not that high. The risks are high when we have something like we're having today, and you have people joining from who knows where, and there's a larger group, and you want to make sure that you avoid this kind of situations. So if it's for formal, for interviews, I don't think you need to worry about that, because it's usually going to be the company's link. If it's catching up with your friends or your team, make sure that you put a password at least in place, where that people need to type before they join that meeting.
Yes, definitely. As part of New Canadians, I mean, I can share something here that we recently celebrated our fifth anniversary, and we had a team meeting on Zoom, and it was a great idea to have because we
Mhm.
had all different pictures available over here that we could see everyone have this discussion, and it felt really like we were all sitting in a room. So, how much of this would you encourage for people, especially at this time when we're all at home, we're all staying indoors? There can be a sense of depression or
Mhm.
this feeling that comes in that you're just apart from like you're away from everyone. How much of
Yeah.
this would you encourage for regular
Um,
chats?
I think, I think the more you can make that happen for your team, and even with your friends and relatives. It doesn't have to be people at work, it can be anybody. The more you can make that happen, the better it is. What I feel is that we've split between people uh, who can't juggle anymore with the amount of stuff that they find themselves that they need to do right now. A lot of people who need to work from home, who have their kids at home and who homeschool, house chores, everybody's there, everybody needs to do something. So it's all this bit, and the other where people, some of them were laid off, some of them don't have that much work to do, some of them live alone. Now they can't go out, they can't talk to too many people. So I think doing this kind of meetings, organizing this kind of meetings, still gives us a sense that, hey, we don't have to social distance if we physically distance. we can still get together and we can still talk and we can still have a coffee or a drink together, if even if we're gonna do it from our own home. And in that case, don't even stress about the environment. Just make sure that you have a good internet connection, and then that's it, because that's what makes it more real. And if your kids suddenly come in and then they want to join you and are curious who's there, just let them. And then at that point, it doesn't matter what kind of background you have behind you or anything like that, because, and you can say, well, I have to hide here so I can talk to you, or here is where my best internet connection is in the whole house, so I have to stay here. Where I think we're at this point where we're breaking down some walls, even if we are hiding behind walls. And that's huge, because that is, I think we'll learn to build a different kind of trust. And if that's one of the lessons that we can take out of the whole situation, then wow, that's a lot.
Definitely, I couldn't agree with you more over here. And I mean, looking at that, of course, like you said, that this is a way of course, social distancing is important right now, but that doesn't mean that we really have to distance each other, ourselves from each other. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what Cafe New Canadians is also about, in a way
Mhm.
that we're coming together over here, discussing conversation, having conversations, discussing topics that largely are of importance to just about everyone, and especially at this time when we're all at home. So, like we were talking about earlier about information interviews and job interviews, I can see this on your slide as well over here. That what about resumes? And because, like I raised the point earlier about distraction, often what it happens is that I'm trying to have a conversation with someone, a video interview, maybe a video chat, and I'm distracted also by what all was I supposed to have around with me, and flipping through pages, trying to have that conversation, also noting down things. So, how is it that one can, do that in a better organized way?
Um, so again, consider what you would be doing. And I think we're at an advantage here when we work virtually, because we can have the job description there and underline a little bit of what they ask, and peek at the kind of information, and not just speak, but just let them know, hey, what I've seen in your job description, you're looking for somebody like this, and I can do that because da da da, my experience is this. It's what I find very useful with having the job description and the resume on the side. Normally, you would know already what's on your resume, but just to make sure that they refer to something that you wrote in there, have it at hand, so you can say something like, "Oh, let me look at this," or you can state the obvious, that you would have them there rather than try to hide it. And it, again, it will also help minimize the distance. It helps them understand that you're very well prepared, and it helps you break a little bit and say, oh, ask, like, okay, so where are we, what exactly are you referring to, and stuff like that, and put a break and take a little bit of more control of the situation. And that helps with boosting the confidence. What I also do when I have a meeting, and even now, like I have my notebook with me, um, and I do, because I'm the kind of person that needs to take notes, because I can visualize things. So think about what helps you. If you usually take notes when you are in a meeting, then definitely have a piece of paper or your notebook or something next to you, and you can say something like, I'm noting things down, or I'm making a note of this. Let people know, because they won't be able to see your desk, but they will see that you do something. So you can say something, show them the pen, right, and say, I'm noting this down. Because in an interview, you would probably also be taking some notes.
Yes.
If that's what you usually do, make sure that you do this now, even if it's virtual, and let them know, okay, so I have this, let me look at this. What are you referring to? Let me take my note this down. Or and you can make some notes, and then at the end ask, okay, so I made my note talking about what you said earlier. I had a question related to that, and that lets them know again that you're professional, that you've been paying attention, that you've been listening to them, and you are in this kind of conversation and dialogue with them, because the whole point of the interview is to have the dialogue, right? So it helps you look professional, and it helps you build on your confidence as you go in the interview.
Yeah. And it also helps one to actually have that natural free flowing conversation
Yeah.
like you would, I mean, I can only imagine if I was sitting across you inside a coffee house right now, then that's exactly how would be talking, hand gestures and like taking little notes and everything. So there's no reason why anyone should feel underconfident or should suddenly start taking extra note of how you're having these conversations online.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Oh, and by the way, because you mentioned coffee shop, have a glass of water or your mug with you or something. Like, I know, for instance, when I keep talking like for longer periods of time, my mouth gets dry. So because I know
Yes.
that I always have some water with me when I'm in this kind of conversations, and it's normal because again, I'm human. I'm not a robot. Nobody expects me to be one. So.
For sure. And what other materials would you recommend that, one should have around them?
So, because we are online, we can have something like, not necessarily slides like we're having today, but it can be that before your interview, you are checking their website. And sometimes it may happen that they say something where especially for those questions at the end of the interview, you might want to use that to your advantage and have their website screen open somewhere in the background. And when you get to that point, okay, so do you have any questions for us? And da da da. You can say something like, oh, let me share my screen because actually I noticed on your website that you shared an article or you said this or you've done that, and connect. Use again, it's a time where we can use this situation to our advantage as people who are being interviewed. First of all, we're on our territory. We can have a supporting background to allow us to send our message across the way we want to send it across. And we can think about something that I can share with them, and make it even more impressive and more interesting for them, because you want to have buy-in from them as well. Or if you have, I'm thinking of, again, maybe people who already have a website or I don't know, some showcase or something that they can show about themselves, like photos or videos or whatever it is. Have it ready and share it with them and say, look, actually, I wanted to share this with you because that's an interview for, or that's a piece of, that's a small piece of an article I wrote for this magazine, and just have it ready to share with them. That's huge. And it, again, it breaks a little bit the normal discussion, and it makes it more interesting for them, right? Because think about it, they still have interviews, a lot of interviews with a lot of other people. So that helps you um, be the special one that they will remember maybe differently.
Definitely. So I have a question here in the chat. I think I've received it as a personal chat here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scenario that you're in a team meeting And of course, you've prepared for it. You've sat down with all the materials that you need around you. You're very focused, but there's something that has just happened that needs your attention. Is it
Mhm.
impolite to kind of request for 2 minutes, put it on pause, or a lot of people, when they need to attend to things in the house, they often keep going to, they switch off their video, they put themselves on mute. How distracting is it? And is it impolite when it comes to a meeting session?
Well, it really depends. It's at this point, because we're in crisis mode and in survival mode. I don't think it's impolite if it's really urgent. I've had, for instance, I was in a conversation with somebody yesterday, and it wasn't a very formal, but it was a business meeting, right? And
Yeah.
then the guy said at one point, look, I'm so sorry, my wife needs her car keys. I don't know why I have them. I need to give it, I need to give the car keys to my wife. Please excuse me. And he just went, he gave the passed the car keys to his wife, and then he came back.
Yeah.
um I mean, yes, these things happen. They wouldn't normally happen if we would still go to the office, but we're not. And everybody knows that our family is around us. So, obviously, ideally, that's why I said ideally, let your family know that this is what you're going to be doing so they don't disturb you. But if there's anything urgent, then definitely address it. Or if what can also happen is you have, and this happens a lot, you have the fire squad passing by and it's so loud, or you have the fire alarm starting in your building if you're in a building, and then you can say something, okay, I can I can see that this is distracting. I will put myself on mute for the time being because I don't want to create problems for everybody. So these are things that happen, and that if you can still have a little bit of control, take it, because I think it also helps you demonstrate what you would be doing in a crisis situation at work, how you handle stress at work. That's a very good example of what you do and how that affects you. You wouldn't normally, if somebody shouts for help, you wouldn't normally ignore them. So address it.
Yeah. And what are the best ways to kind of cover up when it comes to you've suddenly forgotten something, now you need to run and quickly get it, but you don't want to say so? What do you recommend?
um, well, it's again, it really depends on if it's an interview. You'd better do what you can with what you have right then, because even if you don't have your resume with you or your job description with you, normally you know the job that you're interviewing for. So do the best you can with what you have at hand if you didn't really have the option to get everything in place. Now, if there's anything like I forgot my headset and the background noise is really loud, and I want to make it a better meeting, I can say something like, let me get my headset so we can hear each other better. And I'm doing this for everybody, again, for the benefit of that conversation, and that helps.
Yes. You've been sharing some excellent tips when it comes to, how when one can actually do this in the best way. But is there anything that you'd want to share from your personal experience when having these conversations with people, whether someone got it right or did not, and definitely things that you would not recommend?
So definitely, if you can, have meetings either at a laptop or desktop, or have a fixed camera somewhere where you're at the same level. I've seen people having meetings on their phone and actually holding their phone in their hand. And what happens when you are holding your phone and you speak, you're also moving your hand.
Yes.
And if people can see that image, it's going to be up and down and all around, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to be too high or too low. Again, don't sit next with a window behind you, because people cannot see your face, and that's the least that you want to have, especially when you meet somebody for the first time, especially in a virtual conversation. You want them to see you. You want to be able to make at least the eye contact. What I've also seen is that some people are not very comfortable with being on video. And that's another thing that definitely, and I understand, I mean, I'm not saying everybody should be streaming live or anything like that, but think about having, for interviews, information interviews, that's not an option. You have to show up. You can't have an in-person interview without actually going there. It's the same thing. You have to show up. And if it's again, if your team meets online and they're all on video, put yourself on video as well, because otherwise that can be interpreted as disrespectful, and then people are going to be frustrated because why am I on video and they're not on video. So as much as possible, try to use the video feature. I know it's not necessarily something that we're super used to, but it does help, and especially for interviews, you have to. I mean, there's no other way. Unless it's a phone interview, and then yeah, okay, fine. But other than that, no, please show up.
Yeah, definitely. So what would be your top 3 do's and don'ts?
Okay, top 3 do's. First one is prepare.
Okay.
Prepare yourself, prepare your environment, and prepare your family, because if they're around, prepare them as if they were your team. So one is prepare. 2 is dress code. Remember that you just have to dress for the part, right? And then number 3 would be, I think it falls again under preparation, but go beyond that and think about what else you can use now, because you're at home, you have more control than in a normal interview. What could you surprise your interviewers with? What could you have prepared in your background to share your screen and show them? So those would be the main 3. And the do's. And the don'ts is don't be, number 1 is don't be afraid of the video. It actually helps to connect with people better. Don't think that just because it's a click away, it does not take time, and it cannot, think about everything that can go wrong and have a backup plan, like at least have their phone number, or so that you're able to text them just in case you have no internet connection or something like that. So don't think that if it's a click away, you'll have no issue. And don't hide, don't avoid having virtual meetings or networking or formal or informal conversations. Don't avoid them. Because they, first of all, help you connect with others, and it helps them understand that you care about them.
The last point actually touches upon a concern that has come as a question to us on YouTube, which is, what advice would you give to someone who is camera shy or has stage fright when it comes to appearing in front of the camera? So, I mean, you did kind of touch upon it, but is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Think about it as a conversation that you would have, as you said, if you were meeting with somebody in a cafe or in their office or in the street, somewhere in a park, you wouldn't have this fear. Again, it's a conversation. It's not a TEDx talk, right? So
Yeah.
you're not on stage. And think about it this way: they might have the same fear as you. And normally, we generally, as people, we don't like the way that we show up on screen. We don't like to hear our own voices. That's our normal reaction to ourselves. So everybody has it, and it's not. Don't think about it as they're filming me for Canada's Got Talent. It's a connection. It's an opportunity to connect with somebody, and you would normally do it if you were able to be in a face-to-face conversation with them. So treat it as much as possible, treat it as a face-to-face conversation. And that helps with the mindset of it.
Definitely. And just as many other firsts, practice, because
Yeah,
it's very important to familiarize yourself with whatever technology and whatever platform you're going to be using. And
exactly.
I see it as, my advice to someone in the family was once that, if you're a little worried about how it'll go professionally, just get somebody from the family to call you from a different system and try and have that conversation, so that at least before that meeting begins, you're very well sure about how much of you is visible, what's available around you, and so that you can have it in a slightly more seamless way.
Exactly. Preparation goes a long way. There is no, if you prepare, people will say you're a natural. If you
Yeah.
don't prepare, it will show. It's I think Mark Twain said that it takes 2 weeks to prepare an impromptu speech. So think about that. That's why
Yeah,
preparation, absolutely do it. The more formal the conversation, the more preparation we need.
for sure. Thank you, Roxana, for these lovely tips that you've been sharing with us. With this, we've actually come to the end of this session. And any concluding words that you would like to share, or anything that you'd want to conclude with, and then we can go ahead.
Um, so as we said, just to recap, prepare, and in the preparation, think about technology, environment, and yourself, and the follow-up, what you might be willing or able to share with the people that you're talking to. And know your stuff, not what you're supposed to say, and go for it. For the informal meetings, show up, and the more you're able to stay real and connect with everybody on this other side of the screen, the better it is, and the more trust it builds in time.
Definitely. Thank you, Roxana, once again. And thank you to
Thank you.
everyone who joined us today on Cafe New Canadians. We'd like to tell everyone that we're also on Telegram now, so you can connect with us. That's one of the other platforms that we are on, except for, aside from the other social media platforms that we're on, which is Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You can connect with us, tag us in your journey when you're posting videos, posting different things about your journey in Canada. And this is just, you can also connect with us on, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter. This will make sure that you keep getting updates about our top stories. It's a monthly newsletter that'll be right there in your inbox. And at the same time, you can obviously check us out on our website. You can check us out on YouTube. We keep posting our videos there as well. And this was today just one another session that we had as part of Cafe New Canadians, where we keep talking about things that matter to people while they're at home and how they can make the best of their time, most of their time. And we'll have weekly sessions. And the next one is on Thursday, April 9th. This will be a session about how is it that you can build a personal brand in a virtual world. With that, we come to the end of this session. Thank you, Roxana. Thank you to all the people who joined us, and stay home and stay safe.
Thank you, Shruti.
Just before, there was something I forgot here. Before you sign out, I think just when you sign out from Zoom, you will also be prompted with a survey. It'll really help us if you could share your feedback. That will just help us serve you better the next time. Thank you.